Hello and welcome to the season 3 premiere of Gravely Amusing, the only horror and sci-fi podcast that has 12 vacancies. 12 cabins, 12 vacancies. I'm your host, the man. That's from the movie.
I
The
know,
Norman.
that's why I'm smiling and giggling, because it is.
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm your host, the man shouting the macabre, Brian Danger Peters. And I'm back, baby.
Yeah, you are.
Doing a podcast by myself, as Tyler could probably tell you, it's hard. It is very hard. And going to school, working full time, and doing a podcast alone is even harder. So that long break was much needed. Life is sometimes hard, and too much can be hard on me. So, speaking of hard-ons for me, my co-host today is a man that has such a man crush on me that I think it kind of worries your wife, and maybe even worries Superman, who is your other man crush. Have you ever seen Superman and I in the same room?
No, I have that plaque, where it's over there now. I've been rearranging my room. It says, "I'm not saying I'm Superman, just saying you've never seen me and Superman in the same room."
Maybe I am Superman. I mean,
Maybe.
I have the hypno glasses. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Did you know about the hypno glasses? Yeah, but if I didn't, I would know now.
Why are you so trusting?
Because we are men of the cloth.
Listeners, if you haven't seen Superman yet, it is movie of the summer, movie of the year,
Oh my,
and
like,
so good.
just yesterday, I was messaging a friend of ours, Levi. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Man, I just wanna go see it again, like, just 'cause I wanna feel good." Like I just
For
like,
real.
I don't know, I'm just in the mood to just go watch it again, like, uh,
I mean, I saw it 3 times in a week. Like, I think you were what were you at, 5? 4?
I'm at 4 times in theaters, 3 times in a week, uh, and 4 is my total, and if I could get another, I would, but it's, like, 2 weeks, and it'll be on digital,
Yeah. Did
and
you
I'll have
pre-order the steelbook?
yeah.
Day 1, baby.
Yeah, and this is when I will double dip just because of what it is, so I'm okay with that, and then we'll, you know, give away a digital copy, so
Oh, yeah, you got to. So speaking of Superman, Tyler, like, so even though this episode has nothing to do with Superman, you directed a Superman musical. We are talking about direction this
yes.
evening, for sure, and how to direct movies and how to do things the right way. And you just directed a musical. We live outside of Columbus, Ohio, and you directed a musical. Uh, Tell me a little bit about that, man, and direction there.
So we just, last yesterday, I was gonna say last night, but we actually it was our day show. We did our last performance of It's a Bird, It's a Planet Superman, the Superman musical that was written in 1966, and one of the most interesting facts I recently learned, and I learned this from Mark Waid, was that the musical was a success, but part of the reason why they stopped was because those Broadway snobs, weren't getting the audience that they wanted, which means they weren't getting the revenue they wanted because it was children that were coming to see Superman because they wanted to see Superman. And, children in some circles, are not welcome and not really wanted all the time.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
so
F
that
them kids. Absolutely.
it led to the show closing like it did, um, which sucks. But, um, we finished the production and it was fun as Brian Kamen was there. I had a lot of visual Easter eggs. Directing it was fun. Making some slight alterations to the dialogue to not have the broken Chinese language and not misrepresent a people group and just making them kind of these just like gangster thugs instead of what it was fun too. I thought we had a really good turnout, and I actually last night stayed up and I made a video for the cast so that they could see because a lot of them, didn't always get to see the show, but I had filmed every night while we were there and edited together a uh, a version for the cast. So
Aw, look how kind you are.
directing is fun, man. It can be crazy. It can be a lot, but it's fun too. So
Well, I thought you did a great job. I thought the musical was pretty fantastic. Um, I thought you did I thought you did pretty good. So I'm proud of you, kid.
thanks, buddy.
Uh, so more directable thing, and make sure you check out Tyler with the Krypton Report podcast for all your Superman and DC needs. And let's talk about what we're really getting into tonight. So
Hmm.
so Tyler, you had to take something that was already made
Hmm.
in this musical and already kind of written and kind of make changes and update it for a new audience. And you had to see, what worked and what didn't.
Right, right.
And and as things change in the world, um, you also had to ask the question, what is still relevant in this story? Like, could this story be relevant today? And and gravely amusing, I've been talking about how horror has changed and how
Hmm.
pop culture changes and how things change. And one movie that has made a great impact on us, um, is been Psycho.
I
And
mean, it's funny you say that because I was talking about this with some of my castmates a little bit because just the other day the new Final Destination dropped on HBO and I started watching it last night. And so far it's been interesting, but it hasn't been scary. It's been very it feels kind of cheap just the way it looks. It looks like it's
mm,
all CG. You know what I'm saying?
of
It's
course.
more goofy feeling like, and I think sometimes with horror, the farther you go with a horror film concept, you lose the scariness of actually feeling into the characters, and you're almost rooting for the bad guy. Um, and we were talking about that, and we'll talk more about the direction as we go through this, but Psycho, um, it has a legacy of its own. I mean, it's so crazy from a directorial point of view about how Hitchcock made his version, and I think it's just some people just don't give it. It's interesting it wasn't as loved at the time by mass critics, but how we hold it up there like, I don't know, top 5 films. I mean, it's one of those, like, you talk about The Godfather, Jaws, Psycho, of just pinnacle marks in cinema, and I had the pleasure of watching the film with my wife, who did not know the ending. Um,
Oh my gosh.
so
She
it was
never she never saw Psycho?
nope, we watched it.
Oh my gosh, I wish I could have
I
been
think
there.
I think we and it's one that I saw when I was young. I actually
Mm.
watched it's one of the few films I actually watched with my grandparents, my dad's parents, because it was on TV and we watched it, and it was just interesting because they're not ones that really watch a lot of TV. So,
And then that's one question I wanted to ask you, like, how did you first experience this? And so you were watching on TV with your grandparents,
yeah,
and and
it was on AMC, and I mean, there's really nothing edited out for AMC of this film, but
yeah.
it was on I think it was on AMC or TMC because they had one of those where they were, like, hosted by and that they would talk between, like, the quote unquote "commercial breaks" or whatever.
Mhm.
This was back this was back in the late '90s.
I wanna say my first experience with this movie probably I mean, it all goes back to my Aunt Carol, rest in peace, you know? She showed me everything that is good and awesome in this world. and creatively wise. But I think, like, so she would show me sh she loved Mel Brooks, and I'm a humongous Mel Brooks fan, and so I think that I watched High Anxiety first, and High Anxiety is a Mel Brooks film. Mel Brooks, one of the greatest comedic directors and writers of all time. He made this movie called High Anxiety that is a parody of Hitchcock movies. And the main plot of it, kind of like how Scary Movie is a parody of with Scream as its basis, High Anxiety is a parody with Vertigo as its basis. One of Hitchcock's absolute classics.
But the biggest
And
difference is Mel Brooks actually has a wit to his a lot of times
yes,
compared to some of
so
the others are
smart.
just like stupid spoofs. So, but yeah.
And because of all these parodies in it, Carol was like, "Well, you gotta watch Vertigo now and see what the real story is." And then she's like, "Well, you gotta watch Psycho." And I think that I first watched Psycho at Carol's house, and I didn't know the twist. I didn't know anything like it, but she said, and gosh, I wish Carol was still alive today because I would love to have her in this episode because I remember her saying to me, kind of like how I talk to other people about movies, but she was like, "This movie is so iconic." And this scene, there's a scene in this movie where this girl dies, and it is the most iconic scene, and you'll never forget it in your life. And she wasn't kidding. and 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 I wanted to take a deep dive into Psycho and the whole Psycho franchise with you. And this is going to be a two-part episode, possibly. We'll see how long we talk. But part one's probably going to be we'll talk a little bit about the first movie and the differences with the book, and we'll talk about the remake, and then the next episode we'll talk about the rest of the franchise and the sequels and stuff. So, um, so I want you listeners to know that I'm kind of changing things up this season. While I've been doing things by the decade with a little bit of like new stuff mixed in, I'm going to from now on talk about basically what piques my interest, no matter what the decade came in. I felt that season two of this show was kind of messy, and I kind of apologized for that. Well, not kind of apologize. I definitely apologize for that. I was experimenting on kind of what would work with the show and what wouldn't, and who would work with me, and sometimes that didn't go well. Um, so season three of Gravely Musing, you're getting 100% me and maximum effort and charm. So I'm going to try to educate you and provide great discussion topics and stories. And if this is going to be the last season of Gravely Amusing, at least I did it my way because it's my way. My way or the highway. No, you're
I
muted.
was muted. Dang it. I was like, I
Oh,
was laughing.
gosh, come on.
I was trying to be like, are we referencing? I had a pause. Like, are we
Or
going
what's your name?
Frank
Sinatra
Sinatra
and
or are we
Limp
going
Bizkit.
Limp Bizkit? We're 90s kids. We went Limp Bizkit.
It's my way or the highway. Someday you'll see
See,
things my way.
but you
So,
gotta say it whiny too. It's
speaking
my way. My way or the highway.
my way or the highway. So, speaking of highways, Tyler, have you ever stayed at a motel or a hotel and had a nightmare experience close to getting murdered in the shower or anything like that?
No, but I have had ones where I'm like, it just makes you feel uncomfortable, like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't be here." So, yeah,
What is your worst experience?
I'm trying to I was trying to think, when I was younger, I remember we went to this one, and they had a bunch of bees that ended up stinging my dad on the side of the head and on his foot, and it was just a really
WTF?
it was like like on it looked good. This was, like, pre-internet, so and then my grandparents were staying there were some a place close by, and they came and picked us up, and we just went to their hotel. Um, that was pretty rough, but motels, that M word, man, always makes you a little bit more sketch. Like,
Right.
uh, they're always cheaper,
Absolutely.
and, the difference is basically the motel is all the rooms are kind of face outside, they're all outside based, where a hotel is a building where all the rooms are on the inside. Um, Pretty much is, like, the
And then
biggest
you
difference.
have a little extra service in hotels, a
Yeah,
little extra
motels,
accommodations. Well,
everything else is pretty much, yeah, but
I
I'm
think
trying to
I
think.
think because of
I've
this
always
movie.
it's always I feel like this movie killed the independent hotel, motel owner until we started getting Airbnbs, and I feel like
Yeah.
that's just like independent hotel, but now the person's just not there, they're just watching you by cameras. Like, you know
Nope.
what I'm saying?
Straight fact. Absolutely. Like, I
So
think this movie is responsible for me absolutely hating motels. This and a few other experiences, like, and what Hostel was like in a hotel, like kind of weird motel thing, right? And um, of course, this movie, and then I had an experience as a child where like my dad's car broke down on Easter, and like
oh,
we had to stay at a motel on Easter weekend. Um, that was horrible. So that's trauma. But recently, in a couple years ago, it was our anniversary, and Jen and I were going up to Cleveland. Um, and Jen wanted to save money because it's Jen, and she she books us, unbeknownst to me, she books us at like a Red Roof Inn in Cleveland, and yeah, so we go there, and um, there's like someone is sitting outside their room with like a whole bunch of like trash bags. Some
oh,
dudes sitting outside smoking weed and stuff. Sketch as F. Construction's everywhere. Like the whole road's teared up. And then like we go in and the ladies completely ignores us. And and then like I had to ring a bell and talk loud for them to pay attention to us. And we get into our room and we're setting stuff down, and Jen and I always check the mattress at a place because you
yes.
never know bed bugs and stuff. So check a mattress, and there is this huge, giant red spot on the mattress. Like we're not talking like just like drops. We're talking huge. We're talking either some young lady had a situation, or we're talking someone was freaking murdered on this. And we lift up the cover, and it's all over the mattress. Blood everywhere. Like a blood stain everywhere. Like a murder, dude. And like we're freaking out. It's freaking disgusting. And so I we go downstairs immediately, and we go to the front counter girl and like, yeah, our mattress is soaked in blood. So we want our money back, and we want to get the F out of here.
Okay.
And she acted like it wasn't even a surprising thing, like
I know I'm
this is a
laughing,
normal
but
occurrence. Like,
yep.
yeah, yeah, Norma was here. Mrs. Bates was here. No, ain't no thing, normal occurrence. And she said because Jen booked it, and we came in the first night, and we booked she booked it for 2 nights, and because we came in that first night, we could only get reimbursed for the second night and not the first night, because we actually, like, say I was
Showed
like,
up.
"There's blood all over." Yeah, it was freaking ridiculous.
That's when you have to bust
So
out the inner Karen inside, and start like, "Hey, I wanna see the manager." Like,
like, we and, like, I think, like, Jen ended up, like, posting all these, like, horrible reviews and just, like, how disgusting it was, and we eventually got our money back, but
good.
someone died here. Someone died there.
And I mean,
So
that's one of those things where like you've I mean, and you're at a chain and you
Mhm.
you hope that, like, if you're at a chain, you're gonna be getting some sort of trusted quality, but it's not always guaranteed.
I mean, you'd hope, but and from that point on, I forever win an argument with my wife. No more motels. No more. Like, we'll pay the extra. I don't even. We don't even care. so 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 Tyler, scary motels
Yeah,
and
man.
other scary things about this movie too.
I
Why do
see.
you think? So first of all, does this movie, the original movie of 1960, does this movie still hold up today?
Oh, yeah.
And if so, why does it still hold up?
I think because it's a first of all, and looking at directing, you do have 50s aesthetics, but you're not focused on the time frame or the technology to where that's not being hammered home. There, I'm a big I'm a big fan of score in films. I think score helps make a
Yes, you
film
are.
timeless compared to like needle drops. And I think this film, even though it is, the car she drives is the 50s, it doesn't focus on the time frame. It really allows it could be at any time almost, you know? So that helps, first of all. It's still as
Yeah.
relevant
Yeah, that's a good
as
point.
it's
That's a good
still as
point.
relevant as possible. There's a few things you could tweak in it, throw in a line like, "We tried to book." "Oh, did you book online?" Or, someone says something like that, like, "Oh, we don't do that," or, whatever. Um, so you have that to where even the technology is not part of it. You have a simple story, and you have one of the greatest, what I call almost sleight of hand shifts in movie history, where you start with a protagonist, you follow a protagonist interacts with another character, that all of a sudden your protagonist is gone. And this new character is kind of now, you could argue is the protagonist, um, or that, these other characters kind of and take on more of that leadership role. And you're left like, well, what just happened? And it has that
No
shock
movie
value.
ever did it before. Never
And
did it before.
it's brilliant. And Uh, I think it's just a simple story of a person who has mental health issues, and I mean, in our world today where we talk more about mental health and we have people with PTSD diagnosed, um, that cause problems, that I think it's relevant, and it's something that, you know, it's a horror of the mind. It's not working off the supernatural, but it's also not to like the overly, what's the word I'm searching for? Of like your Michael Myers or your Jasons, where it's just getting a little far-fetched. There's a realness to it, and that's where it falls into that horror thriller line, that it teeters. Um, there's mystery to it, there's intrigue, and the directing, I mean, I know it's Hitchcock, but it really, like, he used his TV crew for filming
Yeah.
this, and people were like, "Oh, they used the TV crew." You know, nowadays, the line between TV, the way TV, like, is done because of all the streamers and film starts to blur a lot, and how production's done. So you don't focus on that idea as much, but back then you had distinctive, like, this is how you film a television show, this is how you film a movie. And Hitchcock just basically gave everyone the middle finger with "Watch what I'm gonna do." And I think shooting in black and white was beautiful, because there's an art to shooting in black and white where you use a lot of shadows, and it really helps go back to that timelessness. Even though it's in black and white, and a lot, the absence of color plays a part into the story, you know, um, using the grays. And I mean, for a tale about morality and personality, the gray is in the color of the film itself adds to that story. I better shut up before I take some points you have.
No, you're fine. The artistic tone of that is so important. Um, so yeah, let's get into it. So, how did this movie come about? Well, the movie was originally a book, and it was written in 1959 from an author named Robert Bloch. And around the time that he was writing this, now this is the part where I call bullshit. So around this time, if you follow our show, um, in season 2, episode 19, I think it's episode 19, season 2, episode 19, I talked about Ed Gein, the the grandfather of gore, the
It was a
godfather.
great episode. Look,
Thank you.
and I'm just gonna pause this, like, yes, Brian is my best friend, okay? And I have other friends who've done podcasts, but Brian really invests the time in making a high quality, well-researched, well-done podcast, and I myself get excited when I see that Brian puts out new episodes because 'cause I'm not on every episode. I do love joining, so that was one I was not on, that he had did himself, and I have to tell you, where I was going when I was listening to it was to visit a house for work that's, like, 3 steps away from, like, going down the Ed Gein path. Like, it's out,
Ugh.
it's creepy, there's no cell service from any because I have my phone is T-Mobile, my work phone is Verizon, and neither phone has service. So, like, I'm listening to this podcast downloads as I'm driving to that house. So it just, just enhanced the experience.
It's my job to make you uncomfortable. Um, and I want so before we go any further, if you have not listened to the episode, listeners, go listen to it because it's so relevant. Um, Everything that happened with Ed Gein has influenced not only horror in real life, because this really happened. His story really happened in real life. Um, but it changed horror and pop culture and film and stories forever. Norman Bates, our character we're talking about today, was based on Ed Gein, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, uh, Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. This shows you the range of the horrors and atrocities that Ed Gein did and how it affects different types of horror. Um, so yes, so Robert Bloch apparently just wrote this story about a relationship with a son and his mom, and came up with the concept of being trapped and all this stuff, and supposedly had nothing to do with Ed Gein. But in the book, in the last chapter, when he's talking about Norman, he mentions Ed in the book. So I think that he was writing something. The news came out about Ed, and he changed his story and his book to better fit an Ed Gein thing to sell more copies and make it iconic. That's what I think. I think he had a totally different story, and then just Ed influenced and changes to what he did.
It's not a bad theory. Like,
That's what
he's
I
like, "Oh,"
think.
I have this and it makes you wonder if you're reading if he just had this person, but then he's like, "Oh, this makes it so much more interesting." Hmm. So, yeah, I don't know, but
I mean, it's just what I think. Um, so what are you gonna do? So how did this movie become the Hitchcock film that we all know? So Hitchcock was just filming North by Northwest. And if you watch the movie, another recommendation I will watch as a kind of like a homework to this pocket episode, watch Anthony Hopkins and Helen Mirren in Hitchcock.
that's a
The
good
whole
one.
movie is about the making of Psycho. Um, and it leads to some perspective on how things happen. We're not going to do a deep dive into it, but that movie actually is quite enjoyable. I really enjoyed it. And so Hitchcock just finished his North by Northwest, and I've never seen North by Northwest. It's
We
one of
watched
Hitchcock
that in high
movies,
school, in my film class in high school. It was the Hitchcock film we watched.
and but is it's a spy movie, is it? Isn't it? Like more
Yeah,
spy.
pretty much, yeah.
So what I know is that Hitchcock was at this time kind of known for twists and spy movies and stuff, and they kind of wanted him to they pitched him 2 movies before this movie came out. Um, well, Paramount did. They pitched him to do Casino Royale, which would have been a James Bond story, but not kind of, directed, not like in tune with, um well, I'm so sorry. This was before the James Bond movies came out. So they want him to do that first James Bond story, which was Casino Royale, and start the Bond franchise. Um, but he's like, "No, I gotta do something different." They gave him Diary of Anne Frank, and he said no. He needed to do he wanted to do something different. Um, and he checked the New York Times bestsellers. That's something that he did often to kind of get ideas. And he found the book Psycho, and it was rising on the bestseller list. So he read that book. He picked it up in the airport while he was promoting North by Northwest. He saw that book on the bestseller list, picked it up, and read it in one sitting and told his wife, Alma, "This is our next film." He and Paramount did not have the rights to it, so he bought the rights, for about 9 grand, and he bought up every copy of the book that he could find in bookstores just to protect the twist at the end. So if you lived in LA or New York City, or and you remember the press or just remember, the world, you could not find a copy of these books in major cities. He bought every copy he could just to protect this movie,
Which is crazy
which is
to not
genius. It's
I mean, it's
genius.
genius, but, like, you could not do that today.
No, you absolutely cannot pull off that today, but then you could.
You just have to hope
Um,
people are lazy and don't read.
well, I mean, see, that's I'm glad you said that. So, how many times are we watching, only basically me as being the gatekeeper that I am, like, if they would just read the comic, you know, but the people that make these movies, except James Gunn, they don't read the comics,
Or
and they
they
don't even
read
have
a
scripts
book.
while they start.
They read a comic like, "Oh, I read this." Okay, well, that is not the entire
Maybe,
story.
maybe, but, um but that's a whole nother podcast and story there.
Mhm.
But Paramount Studios didn't want to finance this movie. They thought it was too dark. They thought it was too weird. They thought it was too low budget. Um, and Hitchcock only had like 1 movie left on his contract, if I remember right, before he was going to go over to Universal Studios. So he decided to fund it himself using his own money. Reports say that he remortgaged his house. He had to sell some stuff just to like kind of make this movie work. Um, Now he chose to shoot this movie in black and white, not only to save costs, but most of his TV crew was kind of familiar with doing things in black and white, and for artistic reasons, he wanted to keep it in black and white. It wasn't just a budget thing.
It's smart. Like, it's one of those where doing it in black and white for cost helps with the art, the artisan of it.
I mean, I think that black and white films is kind of a lost art. I think there should be more movies kind of done in black and white, but that's my personal opinion.
I agree because I think there's a lot if you are a skilled director with using shadows and tone, where you don't realize that it's in black and white. Um, but I feel like a lot of more recent, like, okay, this is really new, but like,
You're probably gonna bring up the
with
movie I'm thinking. You
but digitally shot stuff in black and white looks different than film black and white, or like post converted to black and white. There's a different art to it because it's a lot about shooting on black and white about your lighting. Um, and I won't go down any rabbit holes, but yeah, continue.
You're probably thinking about Justice League, but
Well, I mean,
but
yeah, there's Justice League that they did the monochrome version, which is really neat to watch. I like it. But, like, they
mhm,
did the Logan, they did the what was the, Mad Max Fury Road,
yeah.
and then recently, Christopher Nolan shot certain scenes for Oppenheimer in black and white. But even then, it's a very bright black and white. There's a and that's why I like watching the old, like, horror films that are shot in black and white. And that I mean, you've talked about it before, but, like, then you get the juxtaposition of what you get in the '70s where everything is super overlit and bright, and it's just like, "Okay, that's a little much." But
And, and I want you to just think on this question. If Eggers would have shot Nosferatu in black and white, would you have liked it better?
no, because I think that he did that perfect where it walks the line of being the real world, but being dark enough to be playing in the black and white, almost like certain Tim Burton films like Sleepy Hollow, where it's not black and white, but it's using a lot of the same techniques.
Mhm.
You know, we're not gonna go on a whole tangent, but
It's
Eggers
really it's really depth. It's really depth that made the movie horror. Okay. So 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 Hitchcock originally hired a writer, that worked on TV episodes named James Cavanaugh, and Cavanaugh wrote a script that was pretty flat. It didn't have tension that Hitchcock wanted, so he brings in this other guy, because of his agent, Ned I think Ned Mead, I think was his agent's
that
name?
sounds familiar because I did do some research and stuff before you and I on this, but that sounds
Something like that.
familiar.
But Ned's like, "Go with this young writer, give him a chance. His name's Joseph Stefano, and I'm telling you that Joseph is gonna bring he's gonna cook." And and Joseph Stefano, he pitched the movie to Hitchcock like this. He was like, "We're gonna focus this movie on Marion." And well, in the book, she was called Mary, but we're gonna focus this on Marion. We're gonna open this movie on 2 lovers in a hotel, and we're gonna build this story of Marion in a trap, and she can't marry the man that she cares for. She's never done anything in life. She doesn't have children. She's in a dead end job. Her boss is a scumbag. And then we're gonna kill her halfway through the movie. And it was Alma Hitchcock that said, "No, don't wait that long. Kill her 30 minutes in the movie." And because Alma knew what she was doing. She's awesome.
Well, I mean,
And
they tell you in writing school, that your first 15 pages has to have your inciting incident. 15 minutes is where you have to get people hooked. Now, you can play with that, but that's a general guide, right? So at 30 minutes, you've invested in her. It's the perfect time because you're not too
fully invested.
invested. You're not too invested where you can argue, "Oh, she's there most of it." It's right at that crux where, okay, we're past the 15 minutes. We're getting more into the movie. Oh, and then boom, gone.
And and the whole movie just builds the story of her just trying to escape her life and just trying to change it, and then boom. And so other than, killing off the main character in the first 30 minutes, he pitched to Hitchcock, "After that, we're gonna shift the story to Norman Bates, and we're gonna do this shift. But in order for that to work, Hitchcock, we have to make Norman likable. That's the only way this shift's gonna work. We have to make him, likable." And in the book so in the opening part of the book, Norman in the first chapter, Norman is is shown to be in his mid-40s. He's overweight, he's balding, he wears thick glasses, he drinks in high stress situations, he drinks, and he drinks to the point where he blacks out. So anytime that something happens with his mother, Norman is conveniently blacked out drunk or passed out when she kills somebody. Very interesting part of the book. He is awkward, he's isolated, he's deeply
Mhm.
unstable. Um, in the first chapter, he talks about how the world is changing outside. And if he were to exit the house, everything would change. And that's where the scary stuff is. But if he stays home, then he's safe and nothing can change, nothing can harm him. And he's actually reading a book about a tribe in New Guinea, or maybe it's Africa. And this tribe, anyone that goes against the tribe, the members of the tribe take that man and stretch out his body and use his stomach and intestines as a drum.
Oh.
And Norman's reading that. And and then it's like after 5 o'clock or so, and then his mother yells at him and says, "Why don't you turn the sign on?" And Norm's like, "Oh, well, I didn't really think about it. We're not gonna get any business anyway." And then we hear about how the new highway was built and took business away from the motel. And Norman says to Norma, his mother, yeah, I know Norman and Norma, says to his mother that, well, we knew about that tip and we could have sold this motel and we could have, made a lot of money of it. We could have got business in a better place, whatever. And Norma's like, well, you didn't have the balls to do that. You could have done it. And Norman's like, you don't let me do anything. You don't let me have a relationship. You don't let me have any friends. You never let me leave home. And Norma's like, well, you don't have the balls to do it. And we know he doesn't have the balls because we just have this mental voiceover of him saying that how the outside's not safe.
Mhm.
So we see in the book, because the book's always going to reveal a little bit more than the movie sometimes, this this mind change when he talks to his mother and how his thoughts change. Like he's afraid when he's talking to himself, talks to Norma, and then like she almost exposes the BS in him. It's very, very interesting.
Well, I
And
was gonna say, this is an example of where you have to sometimes take a license in transferring the material, because if you were to just do the book, there's really no twist, because you're already so seated that Norman is not okay.
have you read the book?
I have not. You and I have talked about it, and I did listen to some book reviews and did do some kind of like, brushed up on it. I thought about reading it, I just didn't have the time with trying to finish the play. But if you look at the context of the film, when you meet Norman, he just seems like a guy who's just sheltered and lonely. He's likable.
Yes.
You hear about Mother, but you're not buying in that like, it's called Psycho. But then after the shower scene, you're thinking, "Oh, it's about Mother being psycho."
Yes.
And you think Norman is maybe in this trapped relationship, type thing. But I feel like if you were to go with the book, you would already know that Norman is off.
Well, yes. So reading the book, you see the gradual differences in his personality, but from the get-go, you feel he's a creeper because he's in his 40s, he's reading all this weird stuff. He's not likable as you're reading this book. You're already creeped out about it. And
Mhm,
and um and when Hitchcock goes with Anthony Perkins, there is some rumors and some stories that Anthony Perkins actually was homosexual, and that Anthony Perkins, was closeted homosexual, and he had those tensions with his mother. So so you have this real life guy who is holding back who he really is and his real feelings about stuff. Um, almost like a Paul Rubens, if you will.
Mm.
around this time. And him dealing with that personally and then playing a character who's in a trap and can't be his real self made just really good acting. Um, and it's just great. Um, other differences with the book is more gory. Characters are more cold. They're not very likable. You don't feel a lot of sympathy for some characters, especially Sam Loomis, which we'll get into a bit.
Mhm.
Hitchcock felt that the characters need to be more likable to sell the story, to make a good story, and much like me, when I argue with my cousin and some other people, like, for me, great horror isn't always about the gore fest. It's not always about gore. Like, the suspense, the story, the build, the
Mhm.
art of it, and sometimes just a gore fest isn't really artistic to me. That's just my personal opinion. Um,
I like, gore is like, "Oh, that's scary, ugh," but, like, real horror is the stuff that stays with you that gets in your like, "Oh, I'm uncomfortable," and, like, the scene of, like, if I walk away from it, I'm still uncomfortable
yeah,
compared to, like,
and
gore.
and that's what we need. We need those things that mess with your mind, Um, so, alright, let's get into how this movie goes. Um, so, Tyler, do you know the interesting thing about we're like 46 minutes in, and we haven't even, like, started talking about the movie, so this is gonna definitely be a two-parter, but do you do you know the interesting directorial facts about this opening shot of this movie? I figure if anybody knows, it's gonna be you.
I do, and I'm running slow because, like, yeah, I feel like I remember, I just can't think of it right now. I've been overworked these past few days, but I know it's, like, had to do with crap. I don't know. Lay it on me, Bri. Let's do this.
Well, um, Hitchcock originally wanted to film that scene, um, in the city with a helicopter, and he wanted to fly the helicopter around and be able to alter the camera to go into the hotel scene and kinda zoom into it and have that effect, but the cameras at the time couldn't, like, stable with the helicopter. Not to
Yep.
mention Hitchcock hated anything that wasn't on a set. He hated the noises of, like, so when they filmed, like, at the car dealership, like, they were not on a set, they were on, like, an actual car dealership. So, Hitchcock hated that. So he hates the outside sounds. So he had this really great idea with the helicopter, but, oh, the wind and everything and just how it was, he couldn't pull it off. And when Gus does the remake, I'm fairly certain that he did actually get to pull that off on a helicopter and kinda zoom in that way.
Doesn't
But
it make you wonder what Hitchcock could if Hitchcock had the stuff that we have now with, like, drones and the type of technology of that we have now for filming and, like, what he could pull off?
that's a really good question, and you caught me off guard there. Um,
It's just a thought piece. It's nothing to really keep going on. You know, it's just something to, like,
I almost think that the newer technology would have possibly worsened the impact of Hitchcock and his style, because
mm,
Hitchcock always did so much more with less.
and I think yeah,
And if you gave him this more stuff, it might not give him the more with less factor anymore,
it's
you know?
true.
I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, that's a really good question. Um, but this movie starts in a sweaty hotel room in Phoenix, Arizona. In the book, it's Fort Worth, Texas, and, um, but, the differences. Marion Crane in the movie is played by Janet Leigh, and who is Janet Leigh? Anybody? Anybody?
Well, at this time, she was just an actress. She would later be the mother of Jamie Lee Curtis.
Ding, ding, ding. What do we have for him, Johnny?
She's that one lady that appears in Halloween H2O.
Yes, she sure does. Did she play her? No, she played like an office worker, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, she's an
Um,
office worker.
Janet Leigh is Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, cementing Jamie Lee Curtis's fate as a horror queen, just like her mother. Um, and the character of Marion Crane's boyfriend is named Sam Loomis, which also is the name of a character in Tyler. Anybody?
Halloween. And
Halloween. It all comes back to
and
Psycho.
it also carries on into Scream.
Sure as F does. It's all tied back to Psycho, ladies and gentlemen. The first act in this movie is more fleshed out in the film than the book. In the novel, Mary Crane, her name in the book, she's not as emotionally complex. She's colder. She's more calculated. We do find out in the book that basically Marion's trap is her mother was sick, so she had to take care of her mother. And while her mom was sick, she couldn't go and kind of date men or go to school or college and become anything special. And when the mom died, Marion took care of her sister Lila, and Lila went to school for fashion design. And Marion has spent her whole life letting other people, like taking care of other people, and not getting to have the life she wanted. And
Mm,
eventually, Lila, her sister in the book, um, talks Marion into going to a cruise. So she goes on this cruise and she meets Sam Loomis in the book. And she's only on this cruise for like a week. And she meets Sam. They think, she thinks he's handsome. They bang. And he,
like Ricky Martin. They bang, she
they
bang.
bang. Like, she moves, she moves. And they like decide that they're gonna get married. They're gonna be engaged after this cruise. I kid you not. And the thing about Sam, and they only know each other for a couple days. The thing about Sam is Sam lives in Fairville, California, which is 20 hours from Fort Worth, Texas, where Marion lives. So they only can contact after this cruise through letters or phone calls. So they never
Mm,
get to see each other. Um, and you find out that Sam has inherited debt from his father and this hardware store. And this hardware store is just full of debt. And Sam says, I can't marry you until these debts are paid off. So they're like never going to get married. So, so Marion is in this trap. She wants to get married. She barely even knows this guy. That's how desperate she is. In the movie, they have their relationship be a little bit, better, where he goes on these business trips and they bang in the hotels during lunch hours here and there. Um, but I need you to know that in the book, Sam and her barely have a relationship. So that's the stuff that Stefano had to change. Um, so when Marion gets this opportunity of this sleazeball that comes into her office and is like, I bought a $40,000 house, which in today's world, that's about $500,000 with inflation. So we're talking
mhm.
like nearly $500,000. He buys it for he's like an oil mag, whatever, and buys this house. And then the boss gives it to Marion and says, I need you to put it in the bank before the weekend. And Marion makes a decision to steal this money and go and drive 20 hours to Sam. In the book, she sells her car like 10 times. Like
It's a
as she's,
lot.
I know, and she sells her car like 5 to 10 times as she's traveling. And she does this in like, and she drives like 20 hours straight. And in the mix of this, she doesn't sleep and she just keeps selling her car. Yep, I know. It's just weird. It's not written very well. But Hitchcock speed lines that and has, like, a cop following her and stuff, and in the book, it's raining and there's a fork in the road, and the on the left, she could go towards the main highway, but because she can't see very well, she ends up going to the right. So going to this
Mm.
motel is just by accident because she couldn't see very well on the road, and she's so tired after driving, like, 20 hours, which I don't know how anybody could do that ever, 20 like, almost 20 hours straight, but truck drivers, whatever, I guess. But she she goes to the motel just by chance. In the movie, it kinda makes it seem like there's no other way she coulda went, like,
Which I
but
like, but I like that she makes the wrong choice.
yeah, I like that she made the wrong choice as well. Like, her her going down the wrong road, I kinda like that better in the book, um, but, what are you gonna do? And I think my wife just walked through the door, so that's probably why my dog's kinda
Yay.
whining. But, so she arrives at this hotel, and also in the movie, what I like is Hitchcock adds this inner monologue, and we get those strings of, in the sound there. Um, we get the strings and the iconic score, um, of that. So, um, and she gets this inner monologue of she's making the right choices and she's doing that, and she stops at the motel, and she meets Norman, and as as she sees the flickering Bates Motel sign, we're introduced to Norman, and, like, what are your initial thoughts of Anthony Perkins as Norman right when you see him in this movie?
Like, he seems fine, and I mean that in the best way of, like, oh, he just seems like a dude who, um, is lonely and he just he's overexcited to have somebody. He's boyish, a little bit of charm, but I think that's the point, right? Like, you have to buy into him immediately. Like, you have to like him immediately or it doesn't
Exactly,
work.
you're totally right. Like, you have to believe this guy is just, like, just kinda like a boyish, kinda lonely,
'Cause
nice
he's
guy.
gotta reflect Marion. I mean, you
Yeah,
talked about Marion's past and need for escape, and in some ways, we see their similarities. It's like, you don't know where the story's going. He could
yeah.
be it could be that this guy joins her. We don't really know where the story is going. Um,
You're totally right. You're totally right. It's kinda implied that, like, maybe she could get a relationship with Norman at this motel, and, like, you don't know. And, like, that makes it so interesting, and this is where things change dramatically from the book to the film. Like, in the novel, Norman's introduced right away as weird, off-putting, there's no charm, there's no innocence. In the movie, Anthony Perkins smiles at her. It's raining, she honks her horn, and he comes down from the house after arguing with his mother, and you can see a silhouette of the mom in the window, which
mhm.
is a big part of the story. Um, but he's awkward, but it's kinda in a sweet way, like, it's not bad, and after he checks her in, he's like, "Are you hungry? I can make you some sandwiches." He goes back to the house, and his mom yells at him for making the sandwiches and, like, she's a whore. You can't go and have food with her, and he's like, "No, she's hungry," and he brings her food, and they have this whole conversation, where it's revealed that Norman is kinda in a trap, and he has this mentally ill mother. He says she's not well, she's older, she's not all there, and he doesn't want anybody to, like, bother her or meet her, and and, you know, and Marion says to him, and this is where the acting of Anthony Perkins is so good. Is you see this, like, charm and this, like, normal personality, and, like, when she says, "Maybe you should put her in a home," or whatever, and he's like, "An institution? That's everybody means well, but you just wanna put my mother in the nut house, but she's a good person, she's a good person," and he flips out, and then he pulls it back, and he comes back and like, "Well, I might have thought of it a few times." And I al you know what? Now that I think of it, dude, you know who mirrored that? Who mirrored that exact moment? It was,
Who?
um, Cameron Montague when he does the Joker reveal,
Oh,
and
he is so undervalued.
he's so, so under but that's where he took it from, I'm telling you, because when they're talking to him and he's, like, talking about, "I love my mother," and then he switches it and he
It
does the
starts
laugh
laughing.
and then grin, that's I'm telling you, that's where he thought of it, and if I ever met him, I definitely ask that question. Um,
I just tell him,
but
like, "You're so undervalued, bro."
he's so best Joker there is. I don't even care. Um, and like, he's so normal, but when he's confronted about his mother, everything switches for Norman here, and he's much more aggressive, he's much more twisted, he's in fear, you know, and it makes it more chilling. And my question to you, um, is this movie version of Norman more effective because we like him at first? Like, does it soften the horror?
Yes,
Or,
it
like
baits you, not to use a pun, but it baits you in because you don't know the story. You're meeting this guy that you will immediately believe that he is in a bad situation. I mean,
Mhm.
the whole way that the story is constructed just builds to this. I mean, you like I said, you couldn't do exactly like the book. You have a completely different film. Um, and you like Norman, you like what's going on, so you're invested. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and so it's revealed now that so Marion decides to go and, end for the evening. Norman still wants to talk to her a little bit more, and, and sh Norman goes to his office, and, we find out that Norman has a peephole, and he watches Marion, change, and now at this time, which is interesting, at this time, when she's with Sam in the beginning of the movie, this is just a little subtle thing that Hitchcock added. When she's with Sam in the movie and she's getting dressed, she's wearing a white bra. And this is so controversial that I would never be shown in movies either. It's borderline scandalous, with censors and stuff. But when she gets dressed in that hotel, or when she starts getting undressed, she's wearing a black bra. And Hitchcock used that as symbolism, is that at the beginning of the movie, she was clean, but now she's
Mhm.
dirty because she's a thief now. Um,
Mm.
very interesting stuff. Um, and she hops in the shower, and um, we get what is, without a doubt, one of the most iconic moments in horror, one of the most iconic scenes of all time, the shower scene. So in the book, uh, somebody walks in to Mary while she's in the shower, and she gets beheaded. Yeah, they cut her head right off in the shower. A little crazy. In this movie, somebody walks in, looks like as if it's a woman, and stabs her in the shower. And it's every time that the knife goes down, Hitchcock cuts. Every time the knife makes a cut, Hitchcock cuts. Hitchcock used 77 different camera angles in 45 seconds, quick cuts, cut the camera, high pitched violin of the score, chocolate syrup for blood, one of the most iconic screams in movie history. Holy crap, this scene. And also, and also, that's my doggy, everybody. Um, Also, it's not Anthony Perkins in that scene. It's not anybody else. It's not anybody in the movie in that scene. Like, a lot of people think, that maybe, Lila was cast in that, or the girl played Lila, which I can't think of her name, or that Anthony Perkins was in it and made the kill. No, it was somebody totally different just for that scene. And and what else is interesting, Tyler, um, is is a lot of people think she's, like, naked in this scene. So, Janet Leigh actually wore moleskin. So, what moleskin is it's like for dancers and, like, to kinda hide kinda like any scars in their legs and stuff as
Mhm.
they dance. So, she wore this moleskin suit, and with the steam in the shower, some of it was kinda coming off a bit, so any, like, camera or mic guy that was up in the rafters was seeing the whole show. But Hitchcock wanted her to be comfortable and didn't want her to be naked. Um, but but and there's many rumors and well, not necessarily rumors, but many talks of how Hitchcock viewed his actresses.
Mhm.
So and had voyeurism and kind of how that's mirrored in this movie. Um, but he ended up I don't know if you know this, but he ended up getting a nude model to help do this scene. Did you know that?
Mm-mm.
Well, now you do. So
Now I do.
so because he didn't want Janet Leigh to be uncomfortable and do all these nude scenes in front of him, and he had to get this right, he hired a new model that was used to being naked in front of people. So so the storyboards for the movie for this scene was done by I think the guy that actually did like he says he directed the scene, but Hitchcock did. But he helped him with the storyboards, and they get the nudist to help do the scene so that and do Janet's part in it, so that when the knife cuts, like, Hitchcock could cut the scene right when there's about to be nudity. So
Yeah.
he needed her to be there so that he knew, "Okay, so while we're doing this scene, the nudist, okay, we saw a nip, so I gotta film this the exact way with Janet so that even though Janet's not naked, I know when to cut so that it looks like I'm gonna show nudity, but I'm not, like, genius." And the nudist um, is who they is who they wrap up at who Norman wraps up, at the end of it, um, when he's cleaning up stuff. Um, that's all part of that. So,
See,
very,
it's
very
called
interesting.
a stunt double or a butt
Stunt double.
double. Um,
And just genius. Um, and
it
as the
is
blood
genius
as
because
the blood yeah,
you're filming knowing that you're gonna edit because the edit is where you make the movie, okay? Because you can film great scenes. And how many times have you watched a movie where you're like, "Oh, this movie is made of great scenes, but they're not edited or put together that they make a good movie." They're just like, "Okay, this was a good scene. This was a good scene. This was a good scene." But as a
you're
whole, it
totally right.
didn't work. The editing is the process of really taking those film scenes and making them work. And then in something like this, where it's so crucial to the story, and just like, how we've talked about before, like in Scream, it's not always the actor who is the killer in the scenes as the killer. it's a stunt man because, one, you don't wanna give away any clues to who the killer is, and two, in this case, you don't know how much the crew actually knew about the story, and just by having somebody there in that, as the mother, like a random actress or stunt person, okay, you know, that it helps conceal the story. You don't know if you have paparazzi either, like people trying to get information.
So that's the other thing I wanna add. So, with this movie, when it came out, if the movie started, Hitchcock made sure that anybody at the theaters, um, that worked at the theater wouldn't allow anybody into the movie to preserve this twist. And this twist is so good, it was used in Scream 1 with Drew Barrymore, um,
Just
being
shortened.
killed off, and boom, and no one saw that coming. Um, it's and Hitchcock wouldn't let anybody in the theater, when the movie started, to preserve this part of the movie, which made it even more successful. Um, and in the movie, after she dies, and I also wanna add too that, when she as she dies, they didn't have contact lenses that Janet Leigh could use, that because she would have to wear it for 6 weeks for her eye to get used to it with contacts at that time. So, all those scenes where she's laying there and the water's dripping on her eye, like, that really is her eye, and it became so annoying for her, but that's just how great and decade she was. Um, and we see in the movie at this moment in the book, Norman has blacked out drunk, and he's just waking back up, and, um, and he comes back, and, he sees mother, and the iconic line, "Blood, mother, blood!" And he races
Mhm.
down to the motel, and he sees, Marion murdered, and he starts cleaning up this murder, and you might not catch it watching this the first time, but the way that Anthony Perkins delivers this is showing that Norman has done this before, that he
Mhm.
has cleaned up murders before, and he cleans it up so well, and he lays her body in the shower curtain. He knew exactly to do that, and he rolls it up and and carries it out. And in the book, at this moment, Norman misses an earring behind the toilet, which will come into play later. Um, and in the movie, um, they never showed in cinema a toilet on in
It's
cinema.
interesting. It's
Um,
interesting.
yeah, they never show a toilet in cinema, and that's what made it so controversial and um never done before. But it was so key to the story because in this movie, Marion writes down, like, amount she stole and what she used, and she tries to flush it down the toilet, but she doesn't. She just leaves it in the toilet 'cause she's stupid. But
But I mean, what's great is the money is not a thing. That's
yeah,
the thing, is
you
that's what
make
helps with the story is as the plot moves forward and things change, everyone assumes the money is and that money just gets sunk to the bottom of the lake. Like, the money is not anything. Mary just happened to fall into the wrong area. And that's why
wrong
I like
place.
the idea that she makes the wrong choice when driving. Like, there is the other option, and she just happens to take the wrong one.
And I wish they would have put it in the movie, like, like, put more focus on that, like, but, whatever. And maybe they did, and I just can't remember, right? But I do remember, like, her not being able to see well, and then she just sees the sign and goes over. But what are you gonna do? Um, like, and now the focus is on Norman, and now the focus has changed, and we know that Norman is now more involved in the story than we thought. Yeah. Excuse me. And, um, now we get the shift to the female lead to be on Sam Loomis and Marion's sister, Lila. Um, and so I just wanna talk briefly on this, but in the book, Lila shows up at Sam Lewis's house, and it's dark, and he can't see well, and when he answers the door, he kisses Lila like it's Marion. Like, he doesn't even recognize his fiancée. He just, "This is a woman that looks similar to my fiancée," and he starts kissing her, and, like, what the WTF? And we get this story in the book, and they do this in the movie a little bit, just a little bit, but we get this story where, like, in the book, Sam doesn't really care what happened to Marion. Like, he doesn't have any rush or sense of urgency to take care of her. And in the movie, they kinda show that a little bit, like he's not in a rush, but in the book, he really has no rush. And then the character of Arbogast, the private investigator that works for Marion's boss, is introduced. And he's like, "I'll take care of it. I'll investigate it. I'll figure it out, whatever." And he goes and checks out everything for a few days. In the book, they drag this out, but they're showing more how Lila's like, "Why isn't anybody doing anything? Why doesn't anybody care about my sister? Why hasn't Sam gone to the police? Why is this happening?" And, like, they show how, like, Sam is just, like, so stuck in his trap with his dad's debts that, like, he doesn't care about anything else. He doesn't have any hope or focus on anything else. And then when Arbogast is like, "I found the motel, I'm questioning this Norman guy," um, and then they're like, "We'll give this another hour to figure out what's going on." There's so much delay in the urgency, and the book drags it out too much, but nobody cares. And then when, like, Arbogast doesn't call back, they finally go to the sheriff, and they tell the sheriff that Arbogast was gonna go check out and talk to Norman's mother. And the sheriff's like, "He can't talk, no one can talk to," and you get this big reveal, and the sheriff's like, "No one can talk to Norma Bates. She's been dead for 20 years in the book, and she's been dead for 10 years in the movie." And I was a pallbearer. I went to that funeral, and I'm telling you, she's dead, and she committed suicide, and, like, there's that whole, like, "Duh, duh, duh," and we find out that Arbogast was questioning Norman and Anthony Perkins' character. And also, I wanna point out that, Anthony Perkins is eating candy corn in some scenes in the movie, and that's a show of the inner child of Norman Bates. And in the book, when Arbogast questions, Norman, Norman has created this whole scenario of that Marion went off to Chicago. And when the sheriff shows up to investigate stuff, he even says, "Yeah," or when the sheriff calls, he's like, "Yeah, they all went to Chicago." He makes up that whole story. In the movie, they don't really do that. But Arbogast goes to the house and tries to meet Norma Bates. And in the book, Norma Bates meets him at the door and slits his throat. The end. The movie did it so much better. Arbogast goes up the stairs, and we get
It's
this
called suspense.
iconic, dude, bird's eye view of the staircase where Arbogast goes to the top, a door opens to the right, and this woman just goes there, across there really fast, slits his throat or stabs him, whatever. And that was done with a rear projector. And um and then he falls backwards. We get this iconic scene of him falling down the stairs. and he's dead. Uh, and
And not to mention that earlier,
yeah,
we had gotten that kind of bird's eye view of Norman carrying the body and talking to Mother up the stairs,
yes, thank you for
which
mentioning that. Yes,
which is kind of like we're getting another shot with that
carrying
angle.
his mother and talking to her. Yep.
And, like, having that scene, okay, and then having Arbogast now in the house puts us as the audience in the house, with a character who's not familiar, and then going and exploring is much more intense than just, if we were going for shock factor, okay, then that's the difference of suspense and then like horror. If we were going for shock factor, you have him open the door and he gets his throat slit. Oh my God, shock, wow. But to hook us in, to build tension and mystery, he's in the house. He's going up the stairs, and then he gets attacked on the stairs, which being attacked on the stairs sucks. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and after the Arbogast death, Sam and Lila arrive to the motel. Sam is kind of, investigating, Norman and distracting him. Lila finds the paper in the toilet. She knows what's going on, tells Sam. She goes up to the house to investigate. Sam's there distracting Norman. Norman knocks out Sam when they start talking about Mother and he realizes what's going on. Um, and Lila gets in the house and she goes down to the fruit cellar. And we get one of the greatest reveals in all of cinema in all time and one of the best
mm,
twists of all time. She goes down the fruit cellar and there is Mother sitting in a chair. And she turns that chair around. And this was done with actually a crew member at the base of the chair turning it ever so slightly to get the slow effect so that they can reveal this perfectly. And it's a freaking corpse. Mother Hat is dead. So who the heck was Norman talking to? What the hell's going on? And as she's sees this mummified body, Norman Bates busts in after Lila, and he's wearing his mother's dress and a wig with a butcher knife in his hand.
yeah.
Wow.
And
Like, oh my gosh, what the hell is going on? And in the book, this reveal is a lot slower. Like we get Norman's inner monologue that reveals his fractured mind. But Hitchcock doesn't do that. He rips the band-aid right off. And suddenly we reveal that Norman is the killer and Norman has two different personalities. And yeah. And in the book, he has three different personalities, which we're going to touch on just briefly here. But um, after that reveal, I don't know if you know this, Tyler, and listeners probably not, but Hitchcock almost wanted to end that movie kind of right there. Like he was ready to end the movie there, and
mm,
he felt that the next scene with Norman being arrested and like the psychiatrist explanation, he felt it was what is called a hat grabber, and that
yeah.
this is where the audience is going to grab their hats and they're going to start leaving because this is where like this movie's gone. Like it's so like it's going to make things so confusing and whatever. Like, he thought about leaving on that cliffhanger with no explanation, but Stefano pushed him to add that because it would tell the audience the scientific explanation of what the heck's going on. And it's one of the most debated scenes in horror, like that part of the ending there.
That was like one of mine is like, I feel like, and that's where you go, like, is it horror? Like, this movie rides the line so beautifully. Um,
Yeah.
but to me, it is exactly what you just said. This is the explanation that we're not just making things up. Like, this can be real. And it helps that maybe if somebody in the audience, because to me, it's the scene that has to spell it out to make sure the audience understood what just happened.
Yes. I think
You
it's
know,
essential, in my opinion.
I do too because, your audience is either gonna buy into it or like, "Oh, that's stupid." But then you have this scene where it's being told to these characters, so it's the exposition, but it's the characters that need it, and you're like, "Oh, wow, that's what happened. That's what's going on," compared to just being like, "That was stupid," or like,
Right,
because then
right,
you're like, "What
and
was he?"
yeah,
And I think in the book, like you talked about, him blacking out drunk, that's something that I forgot I just pulled it up on my computer. I do have a copy of Hitchcock, the one you referenced. I was checking my archives. Um, but like, "Oh, he's blacked out, so mother's doing this while he's asleep, he can't stop her." Or, you could plant the seed that these blackouts are happening and he's doing it, but in the film, we don't know. There is no blackout, so, like, it makes it much more shocking and attention grabbing.
yep, and it's yeah, it's just it's so good, and, like, so the movie ends with Norman got arrested, and he's in a different room at this moment, and the psychologist comes out, and Dr. Fred Richmond. In a later movie, they changed the name of the doctor. I think his last name's still Richmond, but he has a different first name. But that's in a different movie. Um, but he says, and he says to the audience, and says to Lila and and Sam, that he says, like I said, the mother, and I was just speaking to the mother, and to understand the way I understood it, hearing it from the mother. That is from the mother half of Norman's mind. So in this movie, he has 2 personalities. In the book, he has 3.
I think
So
that 2 works better. In all honesty, I think the 2 work better.
I'll give my 2 cents in a second.
Sure, sure, sure.
But you have continuing the quote here, from the mother half of Norman's mind, you have to go back 10 years to the time when Norman murdered his mother and her lover. Now, he was already dangerously disturbed and had been ever since his father died. His mother was his mother was a clinging, demanding woman, and for years the 2 of them lived that there was no one else in the world. Then she met a man, and it seemed to Norman that she threw him over for this man. I can possibly relate to that. And now that pushed him over the line, and he killed them both. Matricide is probably the most unbearable crime of all, most unbearable to the son who commits it. So he had to erase the crime, at least in his own mind. He stole her corpse. A weighted coffin was buried. He hid the body in the fruit cellar, even treated it to keep it as well as it would keep. And that still wasn't enough. She was there, but she was a corpse. So he had to begin to think and speak for her, give her half his life, so to speak. At times, he could be both personalities, carry on conversations, and at other times, the mother half took over completely. Now, he was never all Norman, but he was often only mother. And that's where that third personality I think is important. But
Okay,
I'll say that
okay,
in a
okay.
second. And because he was so pathologically jealous of her, he assumed that she was jealous of him. Therefore, if he felt a strong attraction to any other woman, the mother side of him would go wild. And then the doctor points at Lila Crane and says, when he met your sister, he was touched by her, aroused by her. He wanted her. And that set it off the jealous mother, and mother killed the girl. Now, after the murder, Norman returned as if from a deep sleep. Like in the book, he wakes up from the blackout. Um, and a dutiful son covered up all traces of the crime he was convinced mother had committed. Now, I also want to read the very last line of the movie. And this is, we now get a slow shot zoom in of Norman sitting in the cell, and while he's in police custody, Norman's thinking, um, "It's sad when a mother has to speak the words that condemn her own son, but I couldn't allow them to believe that I would commit murder. They will put him away now, as I should have years ago. He was always bad, and in the end, he intended to tell them I killed those girls and that man. As if I could do anything but just sit and stare, like one of his stuffed birds. They know I can't move a finger, and I won't. I'll just sit here and be quiet, just in case they do suspect me. They're probably watching me. Well, let them. Let them see what kind of person I am. I'm not going to even go in to swat that fly." And a fly lands on the hand. "I hope they're watching. They'll see. They'll see and they'll know. And they'll say, 'Why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.'" And then it zooms in on his face as he looks up and gives this creepy ass smile. And then we get imposed on the face the skull or the disembodied body of Norma Bates. And then we see the cars pulling out of the swamp. End credits. Holy crap. So good.
Mhm. It really
So,
makes you analyze, like, who
so
if was Norman all good, or was it the mother? Like, because he said, "As I understood it from the mother's side," he even says, like, "As I understood it from the mother's side." So, it lets you know that, uh, Norman wasn't always he wasn't this good kid, like, he had issues, you know?
So I'm glad you kind of dwelled into my questions here. Um, so I think that the psychiatrist's explanation at the end helps it. Do you think it helps it as well? Is
Yeah,
that
I do,
right?
I do. Mhm.
Um, and you were kind of teasing this right now. Like, do you think Norman is responsible for the crimes, or do you think a mother is a separate entity? Like, do you think that there really is a separate personality in his head? Or do you think he's just faking it?
Oh, no, I think there's a second personality in his head. I think he had like he said, he had to create it, um, and he had to trick himself into believing his mother was alive. Um,
Yeah.
and that explains why he would carry the body and do all that, because he believed she was alive, and he's talking to himself, so it is 2 personalities alive in himself. Um, I think the thing is, I don't think the mother or Norman were actually really good. I think it was the battle between them, but, um, mother was trying to protect Norman in some ways, even though it makes you wonder, Norman's regret, if he had any, or did he blank out the fact that he, you know, murdered his mother as well? Did he had to erase the crime, right?
Yes.
So,
Yep.
not only her death, but his involvement with it.
So, what do you think really broke Norman? Like, do you think it was grief of losing his mom, the guilt of killing his mom, or do you think this is something completely darker that we haven't even touched on yet
I
that
think
really broke him? Do you think it was
I
something prior?
I think he had already had issues, and killing his mom is what pushed everything over the edge to the final moment in this context. I think you because okay, you said how old do you think Norman is in this?
Yeah, I mean,
You think he's
I personally think on this movie he's probably about 25, 28, maybe.
so that puts him
No
at like
more than 28.
so let's say he's 15, 16 when he kills, he's still technically a child.
Yeah.
What does that do to a
I
kid?
would say he was
And
probably 27. He killed him when he was 17, because that matches
okay,
up with also Bates Motel, kinda.
so that makes him
He's
that
no more than 30 for sure.
what where does he yeah, like, that breaks him, like and we can and even if we just look at not even thinking about what they did with Bates Motel or anything, but, like, looking at this,
Yeah.
he states that Norman and his mother lived a more recluse, just them against the world type relationship. So that means that
Mhm.
there had to be some other, like, maybe unhealthyisms there. That's even a word I just came up with. Um,
It's a technical
and that
term.
he couldn't take it, he couldn't deal with it. Um, so there's more to it than but the biggest snap was the, uh, killing of his mom. That's why he had to go
I
backwards, he
Yeah.
couldn't do it anymore.
Like, the way I look at this, and we're gonna get more into it in part 2, but, um, I think that there's something was always kinda there in his mind, just lingering, um, of issues, but when he killed his mom, that's when he created these 3 separate personalities, and I like the 3 separate personalities because it matches, and my obsession with this because 'cause I'm working into my comic book, the
Mhm.
of the 3 s of Sigmund Freud's super ego, id, and ego, and
Yeah.
ego is Norman. That is what he shows the world. So ego, that's when Mary shows up at the motel and he comes down the stairs, he's like, "Oh, it's a dirty night." He's like, "Hey, welcome. Welcome. Hey, you hungry? Could I get you something to eat?" And he just wants to talk with her and he's just talking with people. That's the normal Norman. That's Norman. And that's normal. Or I'm sorry, that's normal. The
Mhm.
normal personality. But when someone talks about mother and all that and talks about like bad things about mother, that's when, and also after Norma kills, then we get this other personality of Norman, and that's the child. So when you see in the movie him eating the candy corn, he's eating the candy corn after the murder has been made. And when someone shows up and he has to cover for it. And the child, that's the child personality being like, I gotta protect mom. Mama's gonna protect me. I gotta protect
Mhm.
mom. And it's that childhood stuff. And when he lashes out at her about putting mother in an institution, that's the Norman personality. When he's cleaning up stuff, that's the Norman personality. Anything to protect mother. And and then Norma is the personality that's just killing people and like, you're a whore. And we have the personality that's the ego in the middle that's trying to hold it all together. But
See,
when a woman comes into play, then the super ego of Norma comes into play and wants to kill it. And once this personality acts and jacks up, then the Norman personality has to correct it. And the Norman personality is trying to fix. You froze a little bit. I hope you're still there. The
I'm still
Norma
here.
personality, the Norman personality is trying to fix the Norma personality to bring it back to normal. So it's this child personality fighting the evil personality to bring it back to the normal personality. So the book writes it Norma, Norman, normal. And
I get that, but at the same time, as I like the idea
it is bullshit. Don't matter. Sorry.
um,
Go ahead.
nah, you're fine. I mean, I totally go with you on that, and I like it, but I also like the idea that you have just Norman, who then has to create the personality of Mother, and Norman himself has issues on his personality, like, it's not all because, like, then you get into, like, the idea when I think about the boy, is how much of a boy is that. I guess if you did it more where the boy is who Norman was at the moment he killed his mom. So at that moment he died, okay? The moment he killed his mom, Norman stopped. And then you shift into this new personality, and then you get the mother to where you have the child, which is the person up until the moment he kills his mom. At the moment of killing his mom is when he creates this other personality. And then he has to create mother's personality to help rectify all of this. But he never, as a person, matures past that child. Um, he is still that child going back and forth. Or else, how do you explain the boy without going into a deeper psychological point of at some point in his mind he regresses? But why does he regress to that child if you're going to do that?
I guess watching I guess watching Bates Motel, I can see the potentials for the 3 different personalities.
And I agree. And I'm just looking at it from the point of view of this film.
I know, yeah, you're
So,
right, I'm jumping you're right.
but with Base Motel does a different because you see a regular Norman, then you see when his personality like starts cracking. But I wouldn't even say it's almost like another personality. It's like and then when he adapts mother. So
Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, that is our take, that went longer than I thought it would. But it was a really good dive in this movie, really
I know
good,
we could.
uh,
I would.
depth. We preserved
This
the
would be
twist.
this would be a really good one, Brian, for actually you and I sometime to sit together in the same place and do a commentary on Psycho and talk about some of the why this camera angle works, why this works. Like we've brought it up in this story, but it'd be so much more fun to watch it together.
Yeah, maybe this should have been a commentary, and I screwed that up, but
No, no, you didn't screw it up. I'm just saying,
we
like,
could do.
it would be interesting for us to do that, like, as a bonus or something. Kinda put that in your back pocket for when you don't have an episode recorded and you just have it sitting there to throw it in there.
Touche. So thanks for joining us, everybody. We're gonna do, a part 2 and come out eventually. Um, and we're gonna talk about the remake, and I think that discussion will probably go pretty quick. But I wanna talk about Psycho 2, Psycho 3, and Psycho 4, and Bates Motel, and the choices that were made, and I really want, to give you a little teaser for our next part of the discussion here, and Tyler's gonna join us, of course, is
Oh, yeah.
Tyler hosts a podcast, a second podcast called Requel, and we've been doing a very big debate about Psycho 2. Is it a requel? Is it a legacy sequel? What's the difference between that? Um,
It's been a
and
really good discussion.
very good discussion. And we want to, and we're going to definitely put that in the next episode of the podcast. So make sure you stay tuned as we talk more about Psycho in the next episode here. And exciting talks coming up this season. Tyler and I are going to do a talk on Dexter. We're going to really dive into that, and that's definitely going to be a multi-parter. For sure,
Oh, yeah.
because I'm reading the books. We're doing it in the show. We're going to match it up with Dexter Resurrection and talk about that. We're going to also talk about um, my brain turned off. Oh, Wednesday's coming up this week. We're gonna watch Wednesday and talk about that. I might get Dre to be able to join us in on that. Um, and I'm gonna do an episode on the Incredible Hulk and how the MCU's ruined him, and the history and the psychology of the Incredible
I just
Hulk.
can't wait to I just can't wait
That's
to
gonna be
hear that one because 'cause I've heard it enough, over the years. I just can't wait to hear when you put it together,
oh yeah,
uh, for everyone
I
else. I just wanted to say, Brian,
yeah, man.
our discussion on the remake will be as fast as an Ollie Williams weather report.
It sucks.
Thanks, Ollie.
I mean, well, I think we could probably get through that talk maybe in 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Possibly, possibly.
if it's
Um,
is I mean, it would be longer if we just wanna rip it, but just to actually
no, we're just gonna we're yeah, we could.
it was it was
Because I
not
really wanna talk about Psycho 2. I really wanna
yeah,
talk about Psycho 2. Because Psycho 2
cash grab. The remake, cash grab.
yeah, remake cash grab for sure. But Psycho 2, in my opinion, just a little teaser trailer, it's exactly what a sequel should be. It's exactly what a sequel should be if you're gonna do it so many years later. Just my opinion. Um, Except for maybe one part, one little twist at the end, but we'll get to that. Um, also, exciting episode that's going to come out in September. We're going to talk about, and Jeray's going to join us for that. Um, Possibly Dave might be joining us again. Um, but I always do a Batman Day episode. And this year's episode, the debate, just to kind of piggyback on the 30th anniversary of Batman Begins, did Christopher Nolan ruin Batman? Da, da, da. We're gonna talk about that. And for Christmas this year, I have one that I'm very proud of. I hope it's gonna deliver. I'm basically gonna have a Charles Manson Family Christmas special. I'm gonna throw in there for you. So some nice, exciting episodes coming up, and I hope this episode educated you. I hope it horrified you. I hope it terrified you. And if nothing else, I hope it left you gravely amused. Good night, everybody.